Well, our next speaker, he originally came from India a long time ago, okay. But I said our authors are very diverse, and he is from Silicon Valley. You're an executive out there, aren't you? See, we're really shattering all these old paradigms and beliefs that the people involved in metaphysics are just goofy people. You know what I mean? Because we're getting a lot of executives, like we had Warrow was the lawyer. It doesn't matter anymore. They don't care what people think because we're becoming the mainstream. The other ones are the ones, they're the ones that are not normal anymore. Okay. But this is another one of our new authors. I said every year we try to feature the new ones coming up so we can introduce them as a showcase to the people. Mandeep has written the book, Why? Very easy title to remember, Why? And it's going to be about the eternal questions. So he's going to be speaking on that. You all have questions we call the eternal question, why? So he's going to say what those questions are, and you're going to answer every one of them, aren't you? Okay. As best he can, anyway. Okay, but let's welcome Mandeep Khera. Okay.
Thank you, Dolores. And I also want to thank Julia and Joy. They've been helping with all the logistics and stuff, and it's been really, really good. And also our AV guys, Greg and Megan and Diana, without whom we couldn't even present anything. So thanks for that. And by the way, happy Father's Day to all the fathers in the audience, and reminder to all the kids to call your dad, if they're not alive, in spirit at least. And I want to thank you all for attending this session. And, I have to tell you this. So I present all the time for business. This size audience, sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller, sometimes technical, sometimes business. And I was sitting in the front row here, and the spiritual energy that I could feel was amazing. I mean, it's just, it almost overwhelmed me. So kudos to all of you. I mean, you're portraying, you're communicating that energy out, and I could feel it. And I hope you can feel from each other as well. So what I'll do is I'll go through my background, my journey. And the reason I want to do that is I want to show you how life flows from one end to the other without really your control, and how the destiny plays into that. And then I'll cover a few topics from my book as well. And then hopefully we'll have some time for questions. Is that good? So this was my beginning. Anyone wants to guess which one I am? Is this youngest of the family. So this was back in New Delhi, India. Long, long time ago. I won't tell you my age, but long time ago. So growing up, so this is New Delhi, different parts of New Delhi. This is me. And I think I'll walk down because I can't read from here. So I started in business. So business degree, went through university, Delhi University, a lot of involvement on sports side, involved in politics. If I hadn't moved to the US, I probably would be in Indian government in some position there by now. I also did my CPA there. And in parallel, I was running an ad agency, and I was also an assistant editor for an English newspaper in India. So this was all going on in parallel. And throughout, I was passionate about writing. So I started writing really, really early, and mostly about social problems, social issues, whether it was about marriages or different types of problems that from a social injustice that was happening in India at that time. Moved to the US. I've been in the San Francisco Bay Area for about 25 years now. And it's an interesting story about moving to the US. I frankly did not want to come to the US. And not because I didn't like the US, I just was very comfortable. I had a great life. I was running a newspaper. I was a CPA. I was running an ad agency at a pretty early, young age. And I really had no desire per se. And just like that, 3 months later after I said no, I was here. And it's amazing. I still don't remember all the sequence of things that took place in between. And that to me is kind of was the driving force for me to say, wow, you know, this is where destiny can do what destiny can do to you. So within the US, I've worked for various different companies, smaller companies, bigger companies like HP. I've been a general manager at HP. Small software companies as VP of marketing, sales, VP of engineering. So as you can see, again, I started with a CPA, writing background, moved into marketing, engineering. Again, different roles in different companies. And then I had a dot-com bust back in 2001, jobless for 1 year, and that can make you spiritual really fast. Also gave me a lot of time to work on my book. So I spent a lot of time writing various chapters on the book. And then again back to a big company, and then I've been with the current company as a chief marketing officer for almost 6.5 years. And I think like the earlier speakers pointed out and Dolores pointed out, there's also always that hesitation of what would people think, you know, when you're writing about spiritual books, when you're in Silicon Valley working as a marketing executive, what would people think? Would they think differently of? And frankly, I didn't care. I just didn't. And it's turned out to be a very positive thing. And like other experiences that we heard before, most people have been very receptive. So that's been great to see. While I was doing that in the US, I was also in parallel trying to do different things. I was running my own companies in parallel, so a lot of entrepreneurism. I started various different companies in different fields, from really business to consumer type of companies to business types of companies. Great experience, a lot of fun, lost a lot of money. So none of them made money, which is okay. You know, it's part of the experience. And all these things I felt were connected to each other. To me, one path was leading to another path. And I kept using that opportunity and never said no. And I think as James pointed out earlier, I kept listening to my inner voice every single time. And I said, I was supposed to do this, I'm going to do it. Now, throughout even the last 25 years, I've been writing. I love to write, that's my passion. Write various articles for business magazines as well as personal. So writing, I mean, anytime I get an opportunity, I write. My other passion was movie making. So a few years ago, I said, I want to make a movie. So I found a bunch of people, and some of them are actually famous producers who co-produced with me, co-directed. So I co-produced, co-wrote, co-directed, and acted in the movie. And we released it. We won an award in Portuguese Film Festival. So again, opportunity came along. I wanted to do it. I did it. So why? So why did I write that book? And again, I think it was that inner voice that said that I had to write the book. But how I got influenced early on in my life, really frankly, growing up in India. And I saw a lot of poverty, a lot of richness right next to each other. And I used to question that all the time, even as a kid. I think I was 8, 9, 10 years old. I used to look at people and always say, why is this person hungry? Or why don't they have money? Or why is this kid sick? And how come there's a 5-star hotel, beautiful, right next to a small hut where the kids can't even eat? Right? So I used to ask that question all the time. And that kind of was really the genesis of the seedlings of this book, Why? And I kept asking that question, and more questions, right? So why do children die early? What have they done to deserve that? Why do they get abused? Why do animals get abused? Why do bad people still continue to survive and thrive in some cases, or at least that's what it looks like, right? Why don't we live forever? I mean, this was a question I asked, I think, like when I was 10 years old. And why doesn't God do anything to help? Does He exist? What causes things to happen to certain people but not to others? Again, what's this discrimination? And why is there a war? And what roles do religions play? So I basically took all those questions and incorporated my thoughts, research on various different religions, included even the science perspective and philosopher's perspective, and that's kind of how I started writing the book. It took me about 5 years to write the book over time, and it took a lot more time to simplify the book because I wanted to make sure that every single person in the 6.6 billion people in the world should be able to read and understand the book. So that was ultimate, a lofty goal, but that was my goal. And I had one thing in mind, and someone asked me, well, why? You have a ton of marketing experience, you have a ton of entrepreneurial experience. You could have written a book very easily on any of those topics. Why spiritual? Why? And I frankly said, I was meant to write it. And my goal was, frankly, not to make money. And it's still not. Because money is going to come and go. My goal was to change one life, just one life, and that was my return on investment. And I already know for a fact, I've been talking to people, there are dozens of lives that have changed because of this, because people have come back and given me feedback. So to me, everything else happens from this point on is gravy. So I wanted to so these are different topics covered in my book. I'm not going to go through every single chapter, but I wanted to at least talk about some of the themes in my book and portray to you my feelings of that. Whether you agree with them or not, this is a different thing, but at least I wanted to give my opinions on this. So destiny. So if you look at the official definition of destiny, is predetermined state, condition foreordained by the divine or human will. I think there's a very subtle point here, right? So if you look at the definition, condition foreordained by the divine or human will. So yes, destiny is controlled by the divine, but I do believe we do have a huge role we can play in changing it. And that's kind of what the thinking process should be. Karma, I'm sure all of you have heard of the word karma, right? So it originated from the Sanskrit word karam, which actually means to do, and it comprises the entire cycle of cause and effect. And that's why you see that circle on the top, the image, and that's kind of where the karma is. Obviously it originated by Buddhism, so Gautam Buddha, who originally came up with this, and is spread throughout the world now. But basically the idea was, and this is straight from Buddhism, whatever deeds they do, good or evil, of such they will be the heirs. And wherever the beings spring into existence, their deeds will ripen. And wherever their deeds ripen, there they will earn the fruits of those deeds. Be it in this life, or be it in the next life, or be it in any other future life. And that's a key statement that I've highlighted, whether you associate with Buddhism or not. But I think the point is, your deeds, you get effect of that in this life as well as in future lives. And that's the whole concept. So some of it, you'll see it in this life, and some of it you may not, right? And that's what you have to watch out for. And consciously, if you think about those things, you'll start seeing the effect of something that you did a long time ago in this life. And you can almost feel it. So I've put down here some examples. I just wanted to show the concept of destiny a little bit more in specific real life examples. So this was December 2004. An ordinary day, people enjoying the beach and the beautiful weather. Then
it's coming in. It's coming again.
It's coming again?
Yeah, it's coming again.
I have a little child here.
Yeah. You must find it.
Huh? Your way?
It's coming in a new way.
Yeah.
It's coming again. What? Det kommer en våg igen här, för fulla muggar här nu. Det kommer igen här.
I don't know how many of you remember that, but I mean, it still gives me goosebumps. It gives me the shivers. So life can change just like that. 250,000 people dead just in a few minutes or few hours. I mean, so think about life in that way, right? So now it puts things in perspective. We worry about little crappy things. Things can change just like that, right? But there were some miracle survivors. So there was a story of an Australian couple, Lee Boardsman, I think was his name, from Sydney, Australia, and his wife were sitting at the beach, and they saw kind of about 200 meters of sand recede. And they were watching it, and they were like, what's going on? Like, it was almost like the ocean was taking a deep breath. And then all of a sudden, they started seeing these boats coming right at them. And they ran really, really fast, but the speed of this was hundreds of miles an hour, right? So they were running, and first wave pushed the husband, pushed Lee onto the second floor of a building, and he held onto the post. And his wife was separated from him, and she hid under the car, but miraculously, it pushed the car up, and she was safe as well. They both survived. I mean, 250,000 people die, and those two people survive. Why? A 20-day-old baby was found on a mattress by her dad. He went back to the restaurant, and there's the baby sitting on the mattress crying. Destiny or coincidence? April 2008. Aloha Airlines 243, I don't know how many of you remember this, was pretty devastating, but the fuselage was ripped apart, but it landed safely. Amazing. All passengers survived except for one, and her name was C.B. Lansing. She was a flight attendant who flew out of the plane. But everyone else survived. And look at the plane. When it's like literally ripped in half, and it landed safely. Destiny? August 1985, Japan Airlines 123. So they had a vertical stabilizer, which is the one in the back, broke away. This was probably the most horrifying plane crash in the history of the world, still to date. And the pilot struggled and this is why it's so horrifying, the pilot struggled for over 30 minutes to stabilize the plane, and it went up and down, up and down, up and down. Just imagine the horror in those 500, I mean, even few seconds before you die is horrible, right? I mean, 30 minutes is a lifetime. 524 passengers, all of them died except for 4 female passengers. And look at the picture of this plane. It's crashed into millions and millions of pieces, and 4 people survived. How? No science, no logic can explain to me why. And that's what destiny is all about. So the other topic I talk about is life after life. And it's always the controversial topic because some people like it, some people don't. And is there life after life? What happens after we die? So different religions have different points of view on this topic, right? So Judaism allows some flexibility for afterlife, but doesn't stress on it. So they allow freedom to kind of think of on your own what that means. Hinduism definitely believes. Sikhism. Someone was asking me, so I'm originally of Sikh religion, and someone was asking me, Barbara was asking me earlier, I don't know anything about that religion. It's the 5th largest religion in the world. So it's after Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, and all those. And then the 6th largest is Judaism. So according to that one, the soul merges back with the universe. Buddhism talks about the reincarnation, but with the doctrine of what they call anatta. And anatta is basically a concept of soullessness. So what does that mean? That means they don't believe necessarily there's a soul, a shape that moves from one life to another. They believe that it's an entity. It's basically entity of multiple parts. It's an energy that moves from one life to another, which is a different concept. And of course, Christianity, I think there's some branches that do believe, although most believe in straight heaven or hell. And then Islam, again, very similar to Christianity, believe in paradise or hellfire. So how many people have died on earth? Anyone wants to guess? So to date, since we've been tracking, I guess, since rough estimates of science, any guess? 15 billion. Anyone else? Higher than that. I'm sorry? Couple of billion lower. So there have been about 100 billion people, according to estimates, that have come and gone. Right? By the time I had my presentation, in 1 hour, 6,000 people would be dead in the world. And 15,000 new people will be born. All for nothing? I don't think so. I love this statement from Khalil Gibran. For life and death are one, even as the river and sea are one. In the depth of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond. It's beautiful. So there have been a lot of scientific, obviously, studies done, right? So everyone heard of Dr. Raymond Moody Jr.? Yeah, a lot of nods. So the famous book, Life After Death, his mainly focused on near-death experiences, right? So after you die, people come back, and they share this, and most of them shared this bright light that they saw, and then something pulled them back to their body. The other one that's been done is Professor Ian Stevenson, who wrote 20 cases suggestive of reincarnation back in 1977. So what he did was, he knew that there will be a lot of skepticism around that, right? So he personally vetted each case to ensure there was no influence. He spent a lot of time with them, making sure that they were separate, that no one was communicating anything to them, and so did spend a lot of time on those. So there were some examples where a boy in Beirut, in Lebanon, remembered himself being a 25-year-old mechanic thrown to his death from a speeding car, remembered the exact location, his family, and a lot of detailed facts that a kid could not have known. Okay? An Indian boy, Gopal, started talking about his past life at the age of 3. Remembered his past life in the city of Mathura, which is about 165 miles from his current house in New Delhi. Remembered owning a medical company, remembered getting shot by his brother, met the family, so the family took him over to the other family, and he remembered all of them. He was able to point the names, the addresses, everything at age 3, right? So there's something to that. I mean, there's obviously, and Professor Stevenson has since then documented over 3,000 cases. What's interesting to me is that most of these cases we always hear on the Eastern Hemisphere. So it can't be that reincarnation only is happening on one half of the universe. So obviously, Western Hemisphere, I think the problem is when kids bring something like that up, we shut them up. Don't talk like that. That's sacrilegious, right? We are not open-minded people as a population in the Western Hemisphere. We're not. And because of that, we're losing a lot of knowledge that kids are trying to communicate to, and kids have really the inner knowledge, right? We totally ignore them, and we continue to do that, and because of that, we're losing a lot of information. We're losing half of the universe. So, what's the biggest fear of life? Anyone here not scared of death? Oh wow! See, this is the exclusive group. You guys are. I mean, I think I would say 99% of the population would be totally scared of death, right? Because the concept of death is the fear of unknown, and people are just so afraid. And that's because, again, they don't quite understand what this means. So I said over 100 billion people have come and gone. Trillions of other species have lived and died. So I started counting. It's funny. When I was doing research for my book, I wanted to know how many animals and different species are in this world. I could not find one single statistic. All numbers are trillions. It's like nobody knows. If you look at all the living organisms, forget about the bacteria, right? Even bacteria is a living organism. You look at all the mammals, all kinds of fish in the ocean, all animals. There's just trillions and trillions of species. They're coming and going, dying. It can't be all without purpose. It just doesn't make any sense. So my concept is basically life is a continuum, right? So it's really different forms, different lives. You really never die. You die in this current form, but you never really die. And once you start thinking like that, you're not afraid of death. You know what? You just free yourself all of a sudden. And this is the line I always use with people because I think it just resonates in a very simple format, right? Until you're dead, you're alive. Once you're dead, you're not here. So why are you worrying? What are you worrying about? So to me, it's the caterpillar becomes a butterfly. And that's exactly what happens when we die. So I don't know if you guys can see in the back this cartoon. Can you read it? No? Okay. So I'll read it. So it's basically a female patient lying in the hospital bed and talking to the doctor. And she said, I think I died and came back. There was a brilliant light at the end of a dark tunnel. The last thing I recall is turning it off to save electricity. So, it is funny, and at the same time, it has a poignant issue here, right? So to me, I truly believe that we control our death. I truly believe that. I don't think we can ever die without our own permission. So then you would say, well, why do then people die? Because when you're dying, you get this vision, you get this inspiration that tells you why the life beyond is so much better than the current life, so you go. It makes sense. But I think we truly have a choice. No one can take you unless you really want to die. That's why you see a lot of, with positive feelings, positive vibrations, you see a lot of people coming back because there's something holding them back here which is much, much more powerful than even the beautiful life beyond. So God, the ultimate question, right? Who's God? This? So everyone has an image of a God, right? Why? I mean, is it because our egos don't allow us to think beyond and say, what if God was a supercomputer? Would that scare the hell out of you? I mean, I've had people like giving me eyebrows or almost hit me when I mentioned that, and I said, but why does it bother you? What if it was a supercomputer? It still created us. As far as you're concerned, that supercomputer is still your creator. So why does it bother you? It's just amazing. I mean, the ego of, our egos don't let us think beyond what we want. We want an image. We want a human being on that face. Could be an energy, it could be anything. But we don't want to accept it. And there's the complicated conundrum, right? So if there is a God, who controls him or her? Right? And whoever is that entity, who controls that entity? I personally believe, obviously, human minds are not equipped to grasp the concepts that will probably go nuts, right? And sometimes, actually, I've mentioned this to some people, that maybe the answer lies in the nut houses, in the asylums. If you go there, maybe those people have the answer. So I compare it to a computer. Since I'm from Silicon Valley, I have to do an analogy on computers. And I think, so obviously our body is like hardware, right? So if you take a 386 old processor, old PC, and try to load a major software on it, what would happen? It'll crash, right? It's the same concept. So if we try to use our hardware and our mind to grasp that concept, we'll have problems. We'll go crazy, or we can't figure it out. So the answer lies within. So I think you have to look internally, deeper into your subconscious and into your soul. That's where you'll get the answer. And it is a paradigm shift. You have to think different. Religions, another one of my favorite topics. So I've always had respect for religions. I always believe that religions have a role to play. And I always believe that religions were created for a specific reason at that time. So the oldest religion that they can track is 70,000 years ago. And it's funny that all the religious people fight with each other. Who's the oldest religion? It's like, It's like you need a trophy or something, and it is just amazing. But scientifically, they've tracked down Zoroastrian is the oldest, and then even before that, sun worshippers and natural worshippers, which makes sense because that's how it originally started. So at that time, it made sense, right? I mean, religions were created for a reason. At that time, people were killing each other, and so society wasn't very civilized. So it made sense, and it still makes sense for a lot of people. I think it gives you some good points, gives you scripts to follow, and for some people that they need that. But I think the problem is a lot of people get blinded by faith. So it's like, if I say, look at that beautiful moon, and you're looking at my finger. Look at the moon. And that's the same difference. I think people get so absorbed with religion, they forget God. And then we use religion as an excuse, right? For crimes, for fighting, for killings. And that's the unfortunate part. If you just look at the religion and say, good teaching, let me grasp some good points from this religion, let me get some good points from this religion, and so on, that should be enough. But no, we have to say, oh, my religion is better, I'm going to kill you, And how does God fit in all of this? Does he have a place? So I have a clip, and if you can play that, and if anyone gets offended, I apologize in advance. It's a comedy. It's from George Carlin. So, religion has become a business. Actually, it's the most lucrative business in the world. The second one is pornography. So I don't know if you can read this, so I'll read this. So this is a cartoon clip on atheists. So this one person says, I know that I'm a good, moral, spiritual person because I'm a born-again Christian, whereas you are a wretched non-believer. You wickedly choose to reject God. So the other person says, well, you are a non-believer also. You wickedly choose to reject Allah, Muhammad, Buddha, Ganesha, Vishnu, Atlas, Neptune, Thor, and Zeus, plus other too numerous to mention. So you see, we're both non-believers. I believe in just one less God than you believe in. Right? I mean, it's pretty interesting. So I have an interesting story about religion. Is in Hindu mythology. Has anyone heard of Narad Muni in the mythology? No. So Narad, N-A-R-A-D, Narad Muni, is a famous Hindu sage. Again, it's mythology, so whether he existed or not, I don't know. And so he was a very close disciple of Lord Vishnu. And they were traveling one time around the globe. And so Narad says, so Lord Vishnu, who's your favorite disciple? Thinking he always says Narayan, Narayan, which is like chanting for God, right? So thinking he'll be the most favorite. So Lord Vishnu says, well, let's see, that farmer down there. So Narad Muni is like totally disappointed, angry, and he's like, I wonder what that farmer is doing that I'm not. So he goes down and observes the farmer. So farmer gets up in the morning, thanks God for giving everything, does a little prayer, takes his breakfast, goes to work, works really, really hard farming, takes a break for lunch, prays to God, eats lunch, goes back to work, and then comes home and again prays to God, eats and goes to sleep. So Narad Muni is very upset. He comes back and, wait a minute, I'm constantly chanting your name, Narayan, Narayan. What is this? How can that farmer be your favorite disciple? So Lord Vishnu smiled and said, hey, Narad, can you do a task for me because I have a test for you? So he said, sure, anything, right? So he said, here's a pot of oil. Put it on your head, and I want you to go around the globe without spilling even a drop. So Narad Muni says, oh, no problem, right? So he puts it on, goes around the globe, comes back, says, there, not even a drop spilled. So Lord Vishnu says, so how many times did you say my word? And he said, what do you mean? I was doing your job. I was so focused on not spilling this oil that I didn't even have time to think about it. He said, that's the difference. That farmer was doing also my job, and took my name 3 times during the day. And that's why he's my favorite disciple. And the moral of the story, really, whether the story is true or not, moral of the story is really, forget about the religion. Do your daily, like Khalil Gibran says, daily life is your temple and religion, right? You live your daily life, be nice to people, do good deeds, and remember God even once a day, that's enough. Right? And inside your spirit, right? And so that's the moral of the story on that. Can anyone guess what this is? Any guesses? Wild guesses? Stamp? It probably is. Reduce picture for computer? Close. I'm sorry? Right. Smart ass. So this is Earth. This is Milky Way galaxy. I just wanted to point out how small we are. Now, if you want to find Rogers, Arkansas in there, you can look for that. But and here's universe. Right there. So billions of stars in Milky Way, billions, right? And there are 100 billion galaxies in the universe. And we think we are smart. And we want to fight over religion. And we want to worry about death and life. And come on. Think of the big picture, right? Who are we kidding? So here's a really, really good, so I'm trying to also tie science into it as much as possible because, there's always some skepticism, right? So, and I have to read this because there are a lot of numbers here. So this is Frank Drake, a famous scientist who came up with this equation. And he basically says, if you take all stars in our galaxy, okay, and then you say, what percentage of those stars have planets? And then how many of them would have life conditions similar to Earth? And what percentage of planets with Earth-like conditions will have some kind of life? And then FL is the fraction of planets where intelligent life has evolved, okay? And then FC is fraction of planets with willingness to communicate, and L is lifetime of such civilization. So I took some numbers, okay, just for giggles, right? So I said 20% of stars have planets orbiting, only 20%, and it's a very conservative number. Then I said 1 millionth of those have Earth-like conditions. Extremely conservative. Then I said 1/10 of these planets have some kind of life, not even human life, some kind of life. Now you assume 1,000th of these where life has evolved. Okay, and then 1/100th of these have willingness to communicate with our other civilizations with a lifespan of 10,000 years only. Even with that, we should have at least 800 more civilizations. You can't get any more extremely conservative than that, right? So in the grand scheme of things, we're not much. So the other thing I talked about in my book is power of positive thinking. And it really, really works. We've seen it in sports with positive imagery, with golf and other sports. And it can be applied in all walks of life. I've applied that in various different situations, in meetings, and business negotiations, all that, and it really works. And it was, the best book that came out on this was Norman Vincent Peale back in 1952. So he breaks it down into 3 points. Self-hypnosis is basically telling yourself repeatedly that you want to think positive. Okay, so that's the self-hypnosis part. Attain divine power to use for oneself, which is basically going deep into your subconscious. As James pointed out in his presentation earlier, listening to that inner voice, right? And eliminate all negativity, everything. Can't have any negative thoughts. And on the flip side, he said negative forces also work equally strong. So and I know a lot of people, there are some people who love to be miserable. I mean, they just love to be negative. So I was trying to figure out, and I mentioned that in my book, is why do they love to be so miserable? Is because, here's the irony, they're happy being miserable. It's an oxymoron, right? But that's true. I mean, those people love being miserable. But there are a lot of positive studies done in this area. I mean, there's a study done by GGC Delftland in the Netherlands where optimists had significantly more lifespan than negative people, and there have been studies done in the US. So there's something to that. So in the book, I talk about steps to a contented life. So in the last chapter, and those of you who have the book, you'll see I have a thing called moments of life. And a lot of people don't know this, but each of those letters, so M is for meditation, and so on. So each letter pertains to a step that you can take. It just allows you to easily remember all the steps. In the first letter, so I talk about meditation. TM is just one form that I've been using for a number of years, but you can use any form of meditation. TM, or transcendental meditation, I think is one of the easiest ones to adapt, and you can do it anywhere, frankly, and at any time. So I use that frequently, and there are a lot of scientific studies on TM as to why that's good for you. So you can try it out and see if that works for you. And obviously, remember, life is too short, so enjoy every moment. Enjoy this moment. I mean, me coming here to Rogers, Arkansas, if someone had asked me 5 years ago, I would have said, where is that? And for me coming here, it was meant to be, and spending these moments with you, and it really is my pleasure. So every moment will be gone. I mean, every current moment will be a past moment, very, very shortly. So my book has received, accolades, all that stuff, right? So I've won a few awards, and I'm hoping to get more and really positive reviews. But again, at the end of the day, to me, my biggest award, frankly, has been changing of people's life. My 11-year-old niece was one of the first few people who read my book, and she said, "Wow, I never thought of life this way." And she had been going through some major complications in her head, and it really, really helped her. I had a recent case of a friend of mine who lives in the Midwest, ex-executive CEO of a big company, public company, retired. He was a pretty diehard religious Christian type of person, and I said, "Look, here's my book. You don't need to read it. I understand it might offend some of your religious beliefs, and so you don't have to read it." He read it. He came back, and he just sent me an email about a month ago and said, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know I just reread that book, and because I'm going through some very, very tough time. My wife has Alzheimer's, and she had to go to home. And my friends are having some problems, and I reread the book, and it made a huge difference in my life. And I'm buying another copy and sending it to another friend of mine who's going through some troubled times." So, that is worth a million awards for me. So, okay, so my last slide. So I want to do a real quick exercise and an experiment. So I want you all to think of one thing you want to accomplish or change, but really, really using your positive thinking, okay? Going deep into your subconscious, because I'm going to do this experiment, and I want you to tell me a few weeks from now whether that worked or not. So if we can close your eyes for 30 seconds and think of something you really, really want to change, but go into your deep conscious. Don't try to bargain. Don't say, "God, don't do this or I'll do that." Don't bargain. God is not a merchant, right? So think of one thing you really want. Don't compromise, and go into the deep subconscious. Okay. So now that you've thought through that, if you can send me an email when that thing comes true or not true, I'll share the results with everyone. And that's all I had. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I mean, Mandeep. I'm sorry, I usually.
By the way, my name, it's funny. So someone asked me, I think Barbara was asking me, so how do you pronounce your name?
Does anyone have some questions?
So my name is spelled, literally, when you read it, it reads Mandeep. It's actually pronounced Mandeep, and the way you'll spell that is M-U-N-T-H-E-E-P, which means lantern of the heart. And so, but so many people started calling me Mandeep. So when my book came out, and people read the book, and they said, so they nicknamed me now Deep Man. So go figure.
Well, I didn't insult you by giving your last name.
No.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Well, okay. He seems to be the man with all the answers.
Oh, my email is mkhera@gmail.com. M-K-H-E-R-A. And actually, it's on the last slide. Do you still have it? And here's my website as well, which is...
hard to read. It's very small.
Oh, okay. So my website is y-thebook.com. You'll see all my information on there, all my press releases, all my bio, everything on there. I also have a Twitter account where I post inspiring messages every day, and it's called twitter.com/ylife. So you're welcome to follow me there, and you'll see my messages, and please respond back to me if you like.
We got a few questions here.
I'm sorry? Okay. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I believe in reincarnation. Once you achieve human form, do you always keep reincarnating as a human? Once you achieved human, you never reincarnate as an animal, or because I know animals reincarnate as animals, but once you've achieved human form, do you keep reincarnating as a human?
Yeah, that's the most popular belief. I mean, no one knows for sure, but the most popular belief is that once you form, so you don't get to a human form until you have gone through many, many animal forms. So once you go through the human form, you've kind of evolved, and then from that point on, you have to, how do you end that life cycle, the whole cycle of birth and death, is as a human, then you raise your spiritual awareness, and that's kind of, so think of it as so the analogy I use is think of it as a school. So every year, every lifetime we're going through a school, and we're graduating to the next level, and then eventually you get this nirvana concept of getting rid of that whole cycle.
So you eventually stop reincarnating, you become pure soul? Or?
Exactly. You become part of the universe.
Yeah, I've written about it in my book, where people have been animals, and rocks and plants and everything. Everything is alive.
Yeah. In fact, I'll give you another real-life instance. One of my cousins, she still lives in India, and she gave up everything. She was a PhD, very senior executive in a bank. Her dad died. I'm talking about 40 years ago. And she still lives in India. And her dad died, and she gave up everything. She quit her job. She went into complete serving other people, meditation, those types, total spirituality. And she has reached a 7th level of meditation, basically. She's out, right? I mean, she's in India still, and she comes home once in a while from ashrams, so kind of like Mother Teresa type of person. And she's out of her body for days. I mean, she comes home, and my aunt was telling me that she's out for days, and she comes back. So we asked her, what should people do about life, right? And because she obviously knows the secret. I mean, she has realized it. And she said, just keep doing good deeds. That was her only sentence. She said, just keep doing good deeds.
I think a lot of people fear death because of the way they're going to have to die. Like, I would not want to die in a lot of pain or being burned up or anything. And I wondered what your thoughts were on people who could see an impending death, such as the people that were in the planes that crashed into the World Trade Centers. Do you think that our souls can exit our bodies so that we don't have to feel all that horrific stuff that happens, or do we have to stay there
Yeah,
and experience
I think absolutely. So like I said, I truly believe we control when we die. I truly believe that. Now, can all of them exit the soul without going through the pain? Probably not, because now if you go back to the karma theory, you don't know what karmas are resulting in that, from this life or from your previous life, right? So you probably, in those cases, have to go through that cycle. So now you can come back in the next life more refreshed and with a new life. And it's frankly, it's a pain, but you know what? Nothing lasts. And that's the great thing about, you know, the whole concept of when I was showing the galaxy and the universe and all the lifespans, right? Nothing is going to last. Nothing. I mean, look around you. In fact, you know, I do this all the time. I go to the park for a walk. I see people, their faces, and I say, he'll be gone, she'll be gone. You know, everyone will be gone, right? So it's all a matter of time. So I think it's just a few moments here and there. So even if it's pain in this form, it won't be your spiritual pain. Right.
As you were just doing that last exercise, and you said, do something, you know, to change. I have a fear of public speaking, so this is kind of hard for me to come up here and do this.
Very good.
So I guess
Great.
I'll wait for the email. But as my experience in life, I had a near-death experience when I was 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And that experience changed my outlook on life. And you talked about the fear of death.
Mm-hmm.
And I think having an experience like that, you know, makes you look at things a lot different in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talked about the tsunami and and just thinking of the earthquake when a collective amount of people die together.
Right.
In my understanding, I see that as looking at the whole picture as a soul contract, a collective soul contract for those people to experience this.
Mm-hmm.
So in the whole picture, we experience something even more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you even mentioned it before as far as you put it in perspective of how your life is. Mm-hmm. You see something like that and how that changes someone's life.
Right.
But I just think it's so profound if we can think of that you know, when we see these tragedies and these things happening as a lot of things are changing in this world, that we focus that there's all greater good in it. And we have to look at the bigger picture and the bigger collective.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to really honor those souls that made that decision
Mm-hmm.
to have us give us that greater perspective. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, it's well said, and I think it's interesting how those 250,000 people's paths came together at that moment. I mean, it's interesting, right? It's not random.
Very.
And how those two people from Australia survived just like that. I mean, it's all intertwined and it's all interconnected.
I guess my question is, in your research, have you heard of anybody talk about a collective soul contract, something like that, where many people come together for that greater good?
Not in my research. I have not come across that, but that'll be a good topic for you to write a book on. Dolores is waiting for you.